This is Pooped, People's Opinions on Popular Topics.
On June 10th, 2023, Sikhs from all over Ontario gathered on Ottawa to remember the 1984 Sikh genocide. The 1984 Anti-Sikh Riots, also known as the 1984 Sikh Massacre, was a series of organized riots with the intent of creating confusion and chaos to expel and ethnically cleanse the religious group known as the Sikhs.
So
1984 remains one of the darkest years in modern Indian history. In June of that year, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ordered a military assault on the most significant religious center for Sikhs, Darbar Sahib, the Golden Temple, in Amritsar, Punjab. The attack killed thousands of civilians on October 31st, 1984. Mr. Gandhi was assassinated by two of her Sikh bodyguards. Her assassination triggered genocidal killings around the country, particularly in India's capital city, New Delhi. Frenzied mobs of young Hindu thugs thirsting for revenge burned Sikh-owned stores to the ground, dragged Sikhs out of their homes, cars, and trains, then clubbed them to death or set them aflame before raging off in search of other victims. Witnesses watched with horror as the mobs walked the streets of New Delhi, gang-raping Sikh women, murdering Sikh men, and burning down Sikh homes. Businesses and gurdwaras, eyewitness accounts describe how law enforcement and government officials participated in the massacres by engaging in the violence, inciting civilians to seek vengeance, and providing the mobs with weapons. The pogroms continued unabated, and according to official reports, within 3 days, nearly 3,000 Sikhs had been murdered, at a rate of 1 per minute at the peak of the violence. Unofficial death estimates are far higher, and human rights activists have identified specific individuals complicit in organizing and perpetrating the massacres. Almost as many Sikhs died in a few days in India in 1984 than all the deaths and disappearances in Chile during the 17-year military rule of General Augusto Pinochet between 1973 and 1990, pointed out Barbara Corsett, a former New York Times bureau chief in New Delhi, in a report for World Policy Journal. Almost 40 years later, those who survived the violence have yet to receive any semblance of justice. Most perpetrators have yet to be charged and held accountable for their crimes, and many of the affected families continue to live in poverty and disenfranchisement to this day. The Indian government's formal position for 3 decades has been that accountability comes in the form of silence. The Indian government is certainly not the first to massacre its own citizenry. Yet, as Crosette points out, So many of the nations complicit in ethnic cleansing, including Chile, Argentina, Rwanda, and South Africa, have recognized the importance of addressing past atrocities. Yet the Indian state stubbornly refuses to admit its fault and take ownership of its participation in mass violence, despite enormous evidence to the contrary. It would help if we started with language. The term commonly used to describe the anti-Sikh pogroms of 1984 is riot. The word riot is problematic because it implies random acts of disorganized violence. It invokes images of chaos that overwhelms law enforcement and the government that is there to protect its people. The anti-Sikh violence of 1984 was not a riot. The massacres were not spontaneous, anomalous, or disorganized, according to a report belatedly commissioned by the Government of India in 2000, but for the backing and help of influential and resourceful persons. Killing of Sikhs so swiftly and in large numbers could not have happened. Our failure to properly define the problem has also meant that it has not received the appropriate response. Neither the Indian government nor the international community has treated the violence for what it is, a crime against humanity. If we were to accurately update the language we use to describe the anti-Sikh violence, maybe we could then finally begin a proper discussion about accountability and reparations. Acknowledging the malicious intent underlying the massacre is the first step towards reconciliation. Although 39 years have now passed, India has a historic opportunity to make amends and seek reconciliation, while those directly affected by the violence are still alive. It behooves the Indian state to seek closure on this issue, while the primary stakeholders, survivors, and perpetrators alike are around to reach a resolution. Until then, political stability will remain a challenge as minorities in India, including its more than 21 million Sikhs, will continue to feel alienated and targeted by their own government.